to Allah and they asked Allah for help and assistance. So if their people belied them and wronged them and abused them, in fact no prophet or messenger was sent except that their people called them a liar or a soothsayer or a magician. As Allah said, كَذَلِكَ مَاتَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ مِنْ رَسُولٍ إِلَّا قَالُوا صَاحِرٌ أَوْ مَجْنُونَ. That no prophet came before except that their people said concerning them that they are a magician or they are mentally disabled or unsound. So if it's an example of a prophet or a messenger who called upon Allah and they asked Allah for help and assistance, then it was as a result of that acknowledgement. And if they asked for any other matter in this world, then they asked from Allah Azza wa Jal. Until we come to Isa alayhi salam, who lived, as we know, approximately 2,000 years ago. And he lived at a time in Jerusalem, the Middle East, where the Romans had control and authority in the city or in the surrounding area. And he was an individual who Allah Azza wa Jalla had favored, honored and blessed. And that favor and that blessing, it first came to his mother Maryam, or Mary as she is known in the Western world. And in reality, the incidents or the story concerning Maryam or Mary is lengthy. But suffice to say, as you heard being recited earlier on from Surah Maryam, Allah Azza wa Jalla devoted an entire surah or chapter in His book to this woman Maryam, who's considered to be one of the most noble and virtuous and pure women in the entire creation. Rather, Allah said, "Inna Allah istafaki wa tahharaki wastafaki ala nisa'il alameen." The angels addressed Maryam and they told her that Allah selected you and Allah has purified you and He has selected you over all of the women in creation. So as a consequence, the angels addressed her, "Ya Maryam uqnuti li rabbiki wasjudi warqa'i marraqa'in." So, O Maryam, be subservient and obedient to your Lord and enter into a state of bowing and prostration with the others who worship Allah. So she was a devoted worshipper of Allah. And on one occasion, as Allah mentioned in Surah Maryam, she withdrew from her family and she established a barrier between herself and them. Then Allah Azza wa Jalla decreed that He would send His messenger, His angel Jibreel alayhi salam, to communicate to her the glad tidings of a son. Allah mentions, فَأَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهَا رُوحَنَا فَتَمَثَّلَ لَهَا بَشَرًا سَوِيًّا. Then we sent to her our spirit, meaning Jibreel alayhi salam, and she faced Jibreel, who came in the form of a perfect man. So when she was in a state of seclusion, worshipping Allah, this angel appeared in front of her, but not in the form of an angel, but in the appearance, the outward appearance of a perfect man. Her first words in response to this incredible incident, قالت إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك إن كنت تقيا. She said that I seek refuge in Allah ar-Rahman from you if indeed you are amongst those who fear him. This one statement is sufficient as an evidence of why Allah Azza wa Jalla selected this woman. Allah mentioned, وَالَّتِي أَحْسَنَتْ فَرَجَهَا فَنَفَخْنَا فِيهَا مِنْ رُوحِنَا وَجَعَلْنَاهَا وَابْنَهَا آيَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Allah mentioned in praise of this woman, the one who protected her chastity, protected her honor, and we breathed into her from our spirit. And we made her and her son an ayah, a sign for the entire creation. So she addressed the angel Jibreel alayhi salam, and she asked him to fear Allah, because she disliked to be in a state of seclusion with another man who was not from her close relatives. He then informed her that he was Rasulu Rabbiki li ahabaki gulaman zakiya, that he was the messenger of her Lord, who had gone to her to give her the glad tidings of a righteous and pure son. So she, expressing her astonishment, she said, أَنَّ يَكُونُ لِي غُلَامٌ وَلَمْ يَمْسَسْنِي بَشَرٌ وَلَمْ أَكُ بَغِيًّا. How can I have a son when no man has touched me, nor am I unchaste? And the angel responded by saying that this was a command of Allah, and it was an amr al-maqdiyya, a matter that had already been decreed. So the angel Jibreel alayhi salam breathed into her, and she conceived and carried her son Isa alayhi salam to term. When she gave birth, she returned back to her people. And they looked at her, and they too were shocked that this woman, who had come from such a noble and righteous household, was now approaching them carrying a child. So they looked at her in a state of astonishment and made reference to her righteous parents. But she had already vowed a vow of silence, and she indicated towards her child, who at that stage was a baby in the cradle, and they responded, كَيْفَ نُكَلِّمُ مَنْ كَانَ فِي الْمَهْدِ صَبِيًّا. How can we address a child who is still in the cradle? So imagine this incident which has occurred. This woman, this young woman who is known for her righteousness and piety, has secluded herself from her family in order to worship her Lord. After a period of time, she is returned back to her people, but not alone, carrying a child. From their understanding, as is the understanding in creation, that could only have occurred by the union between a man and a woman, and they did not know her to be married, so they were in a state of shock. She doesn't respond, rather she only indicates towards her child, and they wonder how a child who is in the cradle can speak. At this point, I'd like to remind you of how I introduced this talk, and that is the obligation of a Muslim, and this is their neglect, their obligation to defend the belief of Isa alayhi salam, to defend his character, to defend his sunnah, his tradition, and similarly to defend his mother Maryam alayhi salam in the same manner. And why should we do that? In addition to the fact that he is the messenger of Allah, we should do it because Allah is the one who established that precedent. Allah is the one, as he said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُدَافِعُ عَنِ الَّذِينَ